Hello, I think we're recording. My name is Etta
Yes,
Grace.
I just got a little pop-up.
Perfect. My name is Etta Grace. I'm interviewing today a friend of mine who is from Ripler, and she's actually been on my blog before, and this is the first time that I'm doing a Zoom interview, so please bear with me for any technical difficulties. I will figure this out. But this is Caitlin Koontz, also known as K.E. Koontz. Am I saying that right? Or
Yes,
Katie.
you are.
And
Or Katie or Abalone Tea from my website. I answer to any of it.
Yeah, and so we're here to talk about her book, Howl, which I just reviewed. By the time this video goes up, it'll be last week, so I will put links and things in the description, I guess. That sounds so weird to say. But first, do you want to tell me about myself and how long you've been writing and what it is that you write?
Absolutely. I've been writing for as long as I can remember. I was all scribbling stories in notebooks, that kind of thing. But I started trying to professionally write when I hit about 16. And I actually started doing it for a living when I hit about 20. And I do freelance work, but when it comes to my own stuff, I write a mishmash. I like writing everything from fantasy to crime dramas, and right now my big thing is werewolves.
I think I had you talk once before about your fantasy work, Groundhog's Day, which I also love. So, Katie is definitely a very diverse writer, and she's very good at everything that she does, which is unfair to the rest of us. She's hoarding too much talent for herself. But yes, today we are here to talk about your most recent release, which is Howl. It is a werewolf story, if the title were any indication. And so my first question, and if you see me looking over in this direction, it's because I have a second monitor and all the questions are over here. But this is a werewolf story. And so you had a huge wealth of tropes to pull from. So how do you decide which tropes you wanted to feature and put on display and which ones you wanted to discard to the wayside whenever you were writing and outlining this story?
Well, I started thinking about some of my favorite tropes, which are when they keep some amount of werewolf attributes in their human form. And in the story, one of the main characters who gets bit is Levy, and he does end up growing a tail, and the tail does not go away, even when he's not transformed into the full moon. And I was just like one of those fun things, like you always see them keep the sharp teeth or the golden eyes. And I wanted something that was a little easier to hide from the parents, but definitely a very present issue they had to deal with. And that was kind of how I wrote about all different tropes. I wanted ones that they could keep from the parents, but still ended up being difficult to handle on like the kids level. I think one of the ones that comes up the most is the fact that Levy is always hungry. And I was just thinking about less werewolf tropes and more animals in general, where they'll eat anything you throw their way. And I thought that was a really fun one to think about. What the dog can eat, what the dog can't eat, and how that would transform into like an almost human character.
I really like that. I remember when I was reading, I was curious about if the tail would go away because that's such a big problem to hide. And then it didn't by the end of the book. I was like, oh, okay, we're really committing to this now. So that's a very interesting trait to decide to keep as opposed to like eyes or teeth, because you'd think that a tail is a lot bigger, it'd be harder to hide. But also if your parents are looking you in the face, you can't hide that your eye color has changed or that you suddenly have like giant incisor canines in your mouth. So that's a really clever way to go about doing it. So kind of a follow-up to that question, do you have any favorite werewolf stories that inspired this one?
Ginger Snaps. Now it's an older horror movie, and it is about two sisters who have to deal with one of them getting bit by a werewolf. And that book focuses on how the transformation into a werewolf coincides with the transformation from child, the young woman, where it matches up with she's going out on dates. She's more an adult than she's ever been before. And like in that book, in that movie, the werewolf is kind of like the metaphor for getting older. And I love how that movie is done. By the end of it, the mom found out her daughter's killing people, and she doesn't realize it's a werewolf, but the mother's still just like, you're still my daughter. There's no family turning against her. And it's one of my favorite movies because of that, and because of the werewolf design in it, which is a very monstrous wolf. And I really prefer that design to the upright human. With, you see a lot in like the more modern ones now that they've shifted to CGI over like the practical makeup. And that was a really huge inspiration with Howl.
What was the name of the movie again?
Ginger Snaps?
Ginger Snaps. I will have to check that out. I've never heard of that before, but that sounds great.
There are 3 of them. The first one is, as always, by far the best, but it was a really great movie. I highly recommend it to anyone who likes werewolves.
Yeah, for sure. I'll have to check it out. So in the story, you have 3 siblings, not the 2 sisters that are in that movie. You have Harris Levi. Is it Levi or Levi? Levy.
It's Levi.
Levi. Okay. And Ace. And so how do you decide to write from Harris, the oldest's point of view for this book, as opposed to the one who got turned into the werewolf or the youngest brother?
Okay, that's actually one of my favorite, I'm really excited for this question. That was one of my favorite writing decisions with this story and with the series as a whole. So Howl's the first in a trilogy. It's Howl, Twice Bitten, and Pack Night will be the final book. And the idea is that Levi might get bitten, but it's not his story. It's the story of the brothers as a whole. So you start with the oldest brother, who is used to solving every issue. He takes care of any issues that come up with their parents. He takes care of any issues that come up between them. So when Levi gets bit, it's the oldest brother, Harris, who goes, I'm going to fix this. So the story is from his point of view, because at that point, he is the most active participant. And over the course of the series, the point of views will expand. In the second book, we're going to find Harris and Ace. And by the third book, all 3 point of views will come into play as each character unravels their own little plot.
That's so exciting, because I was going to ask if we're going to see the other brothers get point of views later. So it's cool that you're going to slowly add and expand to that as they start taking a more active role in the story. Because for the first book, Harris is doing a lot of the heavy lifting as the oldest sibling. And I was saying earlier before we started recording, I'm an oldest sibling, so I really related to that. You can tell when somebody has siblings who knows how to write siblings, and it's written very well. And so that's very exciting that we're going to get point of views from the other 2. I'm very looking forward to see how they differ from Harris, because they have very different mindsets. They're very different people, despite being brothers.
Yes, I'm really excited to include more of them and expand on that. I wanted, even in Howl, when it's just through Harris's point of view, I wanted each brother to be very diverse from each other. They're the same family, but my sister and I aren't anything alike when it comes to our views. And I'm sure it's the same. You said you're the oldest sibling. I'm sure it's the same for you with yours. So I really wanted to focus on the differences in their personalities as they go through.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of that. So the next question is, what does a win condition look like for the boys now that one of them has been bit? Is there any way to fix this, or are they just trying to survive, or are there other milestones or goals that they're working towards over the course of the story?
Well, over the course of the story for Hal, they are just trying to survive, but more importantly, they're trying to survive without their parents finding out what's going on. Their parents serve as almost a bigger conflict than the fact that Levi's been bit. They're not only not helpful, but they're actively working against the kids through the book. So the perfect win condition is they figure out what's going on with Levi. They do it without their parents knowing. And with any luck, they'll figure out how to fix the fact that he's a werewolf.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm very interested into seeing how this goalpost moves and changes as the series goes on, because there are some pretty big developments that happen in the book. And I'm excited to see where they go from here, but spoilers.
Yeah, I was trying to pick that answer so it didn't give everything away, but needless to say, it doesn't end at book 1.
Yeah. So another thing that's been piquing my curiosity is if there are any other supernatural creatures in this world. So we have werewolves. Are there vampires? Are there fae? Are there boogeymen? Like, is there a secret world of any kind that they can go to get answers or help, or that's out to get them? Or is it just this one isolated like freak situation? What's really going on here? Or is that spoilers?
Well, it's a bit of all three. It is a bigger world. They have in Howl, the big inciting point is they call it the beast in the woods. So it would be the beast, the first werewolf they encounter. Now, he is not the only werewolf, but he's the only one that they see. So werewolves are the only supernatural creature they encounter, but the idea is that it's a much larger world and they have this very isolated patch of it. And the idea is I wanted to mimic what it's like to be a kid their age. They're 14, 16, 18 at the start of the book. And at that age, you know there's a bigger world out there. And it's by and large out to get you, in your own opinion. But you don't have any way of learning about it. So while it's heavily implied there's more than just the beast, there's never anything that the kids are able to get in touch with that gives them these answers, because when you're that age, there is no concrete answer.
That's a really good explanation of it. I love how you've turned the supernatural into a metaphor with the series, and it definitely does capture the feeling of being like a helpless teenager. One thing I've definitely noticed since moving out of the house and graduating from college is just like how much more freedom you have as an adult. It makes high school seem so dystopian. And reading this reminded me a lot of what it was like to go through that as a high schooler, and also made me very glad I'm not there anymore. So if there happen to be any teenagers listening to this, it gets better. But
it does. It gets better even if it takes a while. You'll get there.
So you mentioned you have a sister. So my question was, do you have any siblings? And if so, how does your relationship with your siblings affect how you write siblings in this book and siblings in your writing in general?
It completely shapes that. You know, my sister and I are very close. We share a house together. And like that interaction with her shapes how I write for siblings. My sister and I handle really serious moments by trying to lighten the mood, which you see a lot with Ace, who is very much that jokester who responds to every situation with like a witty comeback. And we also, when something goes wrong, I always have my sister to turn to. And in the story, I wanted to get that feeling across with the brothers, where it didn't matter what was going on elsewhere. They always had each other to turn to. Harris was always there. And hopefully as they grow, the intention is they're always there for Harris too, because even as the oldest sibling, my sister always has me to fall back on when she hits that roadblock or that stopping point. And there's not a lot of bickering between them in the book. I always see, it's my least favorite trope. You see siblings in movies and they just hate each other. They're always fighting. They're always being mean to each other. And it's such a turn off for me because I sit there going, I would never speak to my sister like that. And so I wanted to kind of show that side of being a sibling with the brothers.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite part of the whole book, was just how ride or die they are for each other. And I cracked up so much with Ace joking about the whole situation. It's so fitting. I've been there. I've done that. Maybe not with werewolves, but I've been there. And so it's just such a refreshing breath of fresh air. I'm a writer, I swear. It's refreshing to see that healthy dynamic on display in this story. And like I said, I especially relate to Harris as an older sibling, and I'm excited to see how the others step up for him. Like Ace does that for Harris in the story already, but in a smaller capacity. So I'm looking forward to seeing him grow into his own as well. It's a very wholesome dynamic between the three of them. And what you said about the bickering really resonated. It's exhausting. I mean, siblings do fight. It's a stressful situation if they do fight. Like, it makes sense. I don't hold it against them, but it makes more sense for them to be supportive too. Squabbles can be born out of frustration, but at the end of the day, that doesn't change the fact that you're there for each other.
Exactly. And like you said, there are squabbles. There are a couple that take place between the brothers through the first book, and there are definitely a few more later on. But at the end of the day, they love each other. And that's like their main focus is always fixing things when there's been an issue and staying there for each other.
Mm-hmm. So what do you hope people take away from this book, and I guess from the series as a whole?
From a writing perspective, that you can always put a fresh twist on an old idea. Werewolves have been done to death, and you can still do them and do something interesting with them. And from a reader's perspective, I hope that aside from just really enjoying it, I hope that they see a bit of what we've talked about, the fact that it's hard being a teenager. And it does get better. It gets better for the brothers through the series later on. And it's going to get better even when you are stuck at that age. And one of the big things that up slightly and lightly in the first book and will continue to be a theme is living rural, not having a whole lot of access to outside information, and still finding like a way to solve your issues. You're still there, even if you're there in a dirt road town and not the big cities you normally see on screen. And the other big thing is the underlying themes of like coming into yourself. There's never a stopping point for that.
That's beautiful. I'm very, very happy to hear writers talk about like the themes that go into their work. It just makes the story so much more meaningful. So what are you most looking forward to about writing the rest of the series?
Watching the brothers continue to come into their own, and specifically Levi's journey. He's almost a background character in the first book, despite it being about him being bitten. And that is by and large because the idea I went with when I picked werewolves was I mentioned Ginger Snaps mirrors growing up as like a young woman. And with this, I wanted to use the werewolf fight to mirror the fact that Levi very much has like undiagnosed depression. It's mentioned in the first book he used to do all these things he loved, and he's kind of stopped doing them and is struggling a bit. And so through the rest of the series, what I'm looking forward to the most is him finding a way to live with that, with being a werewolf, with the issues he's handling now, and just watching him grow as a character as he finds those things he still loves to do and has that eye-opening moment of, hey, his family is still there for him.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely noticed that throughout the first book that since he never gets a POV, like we're seeing his experience entirely through somebody else's eyes. And so I'm looking forward to watching him grow into his own, like you said. It's cool that you're using it as a metaphor for depression. I didn't see that at first, but it makes a lot of sense in retrospect. And again, that kind of ties into what we were saying about like, yeah, things might suck as a teenager, but it gets better. And now they have other interesting problems like the full moon to deal with.
Exactly. And yet, it's kind of meant to be a background thing in the first book. And then you see more of their lives expand and you go, okay, these things make more sense.
Mm-hmm. That's very, very exciting to hear. Lots of interesting plot lines to look forward to. So, in the meantime, what other books are you working on and where can people find you online?
People can find me. I'm most active on Tumblr, where I'm Abalone T. And I have a Patreon under the same name where I post writing excerpts, short stories, art requests, that sort of thing. Right now, I am working on a novel called I Drowned in the Summer of '85, which is a supernatural ghost story drama style of book. And hopefully that one will be out at the end of this year.
I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I'm very excited to have you back, and I hope that this whole video format works out well. But thank you so much for spending the time to talk with me today.
Thank you for having me. This was such a treat. Like, I've been excited all week for it, and it was so much fun to do.
Thank you. I'm flattered. I will have this video up in a couple of weeks. By the time that you're seeing this, then that will be in the past. There will be a mirror post of this on my blog with a transcript for anybody in case the audio cut out or you missed a word. There'll also be a blog version of this post. And the week following when this goes up, I will not have a blog post, but I will be doing a write-in here on YouTube on Monday. And so I'm hoping to see some people there. We will be doing sprints, and I will hopefully be getting some words on Runaways done because I'm hoping to have that finished by the end of the summer. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much for watching.